According to various boxing news sources, which I'll leave links to in the description below, a fight between Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia has been signed, or at least formally agreed. I haven't heard any type of official announcement from either camp, but this is what various boxing news sources are saying. As I say, I'll leave links in the description below. However, in the meantime, Danny Garcia has opted to take a stay busy fight against an individual called Samuel Vargas. He is currently 25-2 with one draw. He fought Errol Spence a couple of years ago when Errol Spence was a 15-0 prospect. I think he was 15-0 at the time. And he lost by 4th round KO to Errol Spence. So Danny Garcia taking this fight at this stage of his career is going to be frowned on by a lot of people. They're going to be saying, why is Danny Garcia fighting a guy that Errol Spence fought a couple of years ago when Spence was just a novice in the game? And Danny Garcia is a world champion. How can he justify this? Well, I've been very critical of Danny Garcia's opposition over the past few years, but I have to be fair and honest here and balanced. This fight against Samuel Vargas is a non-title bout for Danny Garcia. The WBC belt is not on the line. And I hate to get old school on you guys again, but back in the days, particularly from the mid-90s and earlier, it was commonplace for world champions to take non-title bouts against nondescript opposition in between title bouts. James Toney used to do it all the time. Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. used to do it all the time. Roberto Duran, same thing. Lots of non-title bouts in between title bouts against nondescript opposition. And that's what Danny Garcia is doing here in fighting Samuel Vargas. The fight will be in Philly, Danny Garcia's hometown. It will give his home crowd the opportunity to see him. It's only a 10-rounder, not a 12-rounder. However, some people will counter that argument by saying, look, Hatman, Danny Garcia is holding that WBC belt hostage. So forget about these tune-up fights, these non-title bouts. Forget about all that. He needs to defend that title. That title's too stagnant, and he needs to defend it against a legitimate opponent. Well, he has consulted the WBC about taking this non-title bout, and they've agreed to it because of the fact that his mandatory challenger, Amir Khan, who is still his mandatory challenger, by the way, there was some doubt about whether Khan was still the mandatory challenger because of the fact he was removed from the WBC rankings after failing to enroll in the clean boxing program. But subsequently, Amir Khan has contacted the WBC, explained the situation, and explained that he is ready and willing to enroll in that clean boxing program. So they have said that Khan will remain as Garcia's mandatory challenger. However, Khan is injured. He's recovering from hand surgery. So he's not going to be ready to face Danny Garcia anytime soon. And that's the reason that the WBC have allowed Danny Garcia to take this non-title bout. Furthermore, Khan, from what I've read, and I might be slightly off by a month or two with this, but Khan won't be ready to fight anybody, much less Danny Garcia, until I think they're saying May, April at the earliest, 2017. So what's Danny Garcia going to do in the meantime? He could take a voluntary, but as I said at the start of this video, there is apparently some type of agreement between him and Keith Thurman's camp for them two to fight each other in the early part of 2017. So if that's true, then we're likely to see this unification between Garcia and Keith Thurman happen before Danny Garcia has to face his mandatory challenger, Amir Khan, if it's still Khan at that time. And as far as that fight goes, Garcia against Keith Thurman, I like the fight, obviously. It's the fight that should be happening. And it's a fight that I think will happen. And the reason why I think it will happen is because it has to happen. PBC at the moment are in difficulties. Let's just say that. Financial difficulties. Excuse me. Boxing in the United States cannot be revived to the levels it was at in the 70s and 80s. That's obviously what Al Heyman was hoping to do with PBC, to reignite the grassroots support for boxing in the United States. But it hasn't worked. Or at least it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than Al Heyman first anticipated. Because boxing in the United States is now just a niche sport where only the very, very top fighters get paid any decent money. Everybody else is starving pretty much. Al Heyman tried to address that by putting boxing back on network television or free-to-air television and paying lower down fighters better money. And that's a way of also getting more people, more young talent interested in being professional boxers, because they're thinking, okay, well, I can fight at local level on PBC and earn fairly decent money. I don't have to go and play basketball. I don't have to go play football. I don't have to go get a 9-to-5. I can pursue my boxing talent, and on PBC, I can actually earn a decent amount of money fighting at local or, national level. You don't necessarily have to be world title level. That was something that PBC was offering. But in order for that model to work, there has to be the fan interest. And the fan interest is very, very slow on the uptake. I know Errol Spence did pretty good viewing figures for his fight against, what's that little guy called again? I forget his name. Leonard Bundu. That did pretty good viewing figures. But I think there was a basketball game or a football game that coincided with that around the same time on the same channel. So that might account for why the viewing figures were so high. And yeah, anyway, PBC is in difficulty at the moment financially. I like what they're trying to do, but the American market is just not responding the way that Al Heyman had hoped. And I've said this previously and I'll say it again. The PBC model would work a hell of a lot better in the UK. British boxing fans and the British boxing market would be much more receptive to that type of model where they put all these high-profile boxers on terrestrial television, free-to-air television. That would go down a storm in the UK. I'm telling you now, that business model would work a lot better in the UK than it's working in the US. But because it's not working particularly well in the US at the moment, that's why I think this Danny Garcia-Keith Thurman fight will happen. Because they need a big fight to put the PBC stamp on. They need it for the future of PBC, for the survival of PBC, for the survival of Al Heyman as an entity in the boxing world. They need a big fight between two PBC Al Heyman guys. And a unification between Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia, that's the one. So I think it will happen for that reason. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from Al Heyman on both of those guys to get together and make that fight. And I think it's a great fight. A unification, obviously. I've said all along, I think Keith Thurman wins that fight. Probably on points. Danny Garcia's got a good chin. I think Keith Thurman is the more versatile fighter. Maybe you disagree. How do you feel about Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia? And if you've got any more information on that situation, as always, drop it in the comment section below, because these boxing websites are reporting that it is signed for the early part of 2017, but I haven't seen any official formal announcements. Maybe you have. And as I say, you can enlighten us all to what you know. So let me know how you feel about everything I talked about in this video, people, with regards to Danny Garcia and his upcoming tune-up fight, with regards to Amir Khan, with regards to PBC, and also with regards to this big unification clash. Hopefully it takes place between Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia. How do you see it going? Who do you think wins? How would that fight play out? Drop it all in the comment section below. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.